Jax Calder was still very much in a relationship when everything went wrong. He fully believed that his boyfriend loved him enough to be faithful. Marco Valente was rich, dangerous, and beautiful in the way men with power often were. Dating him meant private drivers, gold watches, and constant reminders that Marco owned half the city, and maybe owned Jax too. Jax came from nothing glamorous. His childhood was cramped apartments, borrowed clothes, and learning how to read people before they hurt him. Marco liked that about him, called it charming. That night, Jax came home early with a stupid grin and a surprise birthday cake balanced in his hands. Marco had mentioned being tired, but it was his birthday, and Jax thought maybe he'd surprise him. They'd laugh, eat too much sugar, and fall asleep tangled together. The bedroom door was half open. There was a girl in Marco's bed. Long legs, messy hair. Marco's voice was low and intimate, nothing like the careless tone he used with Jax. The cake slipped from Jax's hands, hitting the floor. Marco looked up, didn't apologize, just sighed. Jax laughed instead, a short, broken sound. "Wow," he said. Marco stood, reaching for his robe. "Don't be dramatic." Jax grabbed his jacket and left before he could cry. He didn't want Marco to see him hurt. A few minutes later, Jax didn't go to Luca Moretti's house because it was safe. He went because Marco Valente would hate it. While Jax's phone buzzed non-stop with Marco's messages, half apologies, half threats, he pulled up outside the iron gates, heart hammering so loud it drowned out reason. This was reckless. This was stupid. This was exactly the point. The gate camera turned. Silence stretched. Jax almost changed his mind. Then the gates opened. Luca Moretti stood there in black slacks and an unbuttoned shirt, cigarette dangling between his fingers. He looked genuinely surprised. His brows lifted. His gaze flicked over Jax's pale face, clenched fists, trembling shoulders. "Well," Luca said slowly, "this is unexpected." Jax swallowed. His voice shook despite his effort to sound brave. "I want to get revenge on Marco." Luca stared at him for a long second, then he smirked. Without another word, Luca stepped aside and gestured inside. "Come in." Jax blinked. "That's it? No interrogation? No gun to my head?" Luca closed the door behind him with a decisive click. "If you want to hurt Marco Valente," he said, voice smooth and amused, "you couldn't have chosen better." Jax's knees nearly gave out from relief and fear tangled together. Luca moved closer, towering, eyes dark with interest. "You're scared," Luca observed. "Terrified," Jax admitted. Luca's smile widened. "Good. That means you understand the stakes." He reached out, fingers tilting Jax's chin up. Not rough, but unyielding. "You came to me for revenge," Luca said softly. "Now you belong to the game." Jax shivered. Somewhere deep down, a reckless spark flared. Marco had broken him. Luca Moretti looked like he planned to use every piece. Luca now leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying Jax like he was deciding whether to break him or keep him. "So," Luca said calmly, "what's your plan?" Jax's pulse thudded in his ears, fear sat heavy in his chest, but anger steadied him. He lifted his chin. "I want revenge," he said. "Not violence." He forced a crooked smile. "Fake date me." Luca blinked, genuinely caught off guard. Then he laughed, low, sharp, intrigued. "You want to pretend to be mine?" "You're his rival," Jax said quickly. "Your name alone will drive him insane." Luca pushed off the counter and walked closer, slow and deliberate. "And what do I get?" Jax swallowed. "Entertainment?" Luca's eyes darkened. "You're brave," he said, "or stupid?" "Both," Jax replied, then added softly, "I can help you hurt him." Luca stopped right in front of him. "How?" They sat across from each other, tension thick. Luca poured wine, movements unhurried. "Marco Valente doesn't bleed easily," Luca said. "If I'm putting my reputation on you, I want leverage." He lifted his glass. "His secrets." Jax's stomach dropped. He didn't hesitate long enough for Luca to notice. "I have plenty," Jax said smoothly. "More than he realizes." Luca's brows lifted slightly. "Interesting." Jax nodded, hard hammering. "He talks when he's careless. I remember things." It wasn't entirely untrue. Marco talked a lot. Jax had just never listened with intent. Never wanted to be involved. But Luca didn't need to know that. Luca studied him, eyes sharp, searching for cracks. Names, routes, deals. Jack smiled, confidence carefully practiced, enough to ruin him. Luca smiled. All right, Luca said. We fake date. And you feed me Valente's secrets. He leaned forward. He reached out, fingers brushing Jax's knuckles, possessive, deliberate. You'll stay here, Luca said. For protection. Because you're generous? Jax asked lightly. Because you're valuable, Luca replied. Heat crept up Jax's neck. He joked because silence scared him. Do fake boyfriends get a handbook? Luca stood, towering over him. You'll learn on the job. He tugged Jax up by the hand. The contact sent a shiver through him. Luca's grip was firm, grounding. Tomorrow, Luca said, we go public. Jax nodded, adrenaline buzzing. As Luca led him down the hallway, Jax's smile stayed steady, while his thoughts raced. He had lied. Boldly. Recklessly. He had no real secrets. He would have to learn fast. Marco Valente was shirtless, pacing his penthouse, fury vibrating through every step as his phone buzzed with confirmation. The tracker app blinked once, then settled. A familiar dot, a familiar address. Luca Moretti. Marco laughed, sharp, humorless. You stupid little traitor, he muttered. Of all the places Jax could have gone, he chose him. Marco's pride burned hotter than the betrayal. Jax was a possession that had slipped out of Marco's grip. Marco slammed his glass down, red wine splashing like blood across marble. He replayed the night over and over. Jax's laugh, the way he'd walked out without begging. Marco had expected tears, fear, not defiance. He grabbed his phone and typed a message he didn't send. Instead, he forwarded the location to his men. Keep eyes on the house, Marco ordered. Don't make moves yet, because this wasn't just about getting Jax back. And Jax going to meet Luca Moretti was disrespectful, and meant that Marco had no control on what belonged to him. Jax woke up with a strange sense of calm. It took him a moment to remember where he was. Silk sheets, a massive window, the faint scent of Luca's cologne. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. I know where you are. Jax's blood turned cold. He sat up, just as Luca appeared in the doorway, already dressed, expression unreadable. Marco, Luca said, not a question. He has my location, Jax admitted, voice tight. Luca crossed the room in 3 long strides and took the phone from Jax's hands. He read the message, then smirked. Of course he does. Jax stared at him. You're not worried? Oh, I'm thrilled, Luca replied. This saves me time. Jax swung his legs off the bed, panic creeping in. Luca, I didn't come here to start a shootout. I just wanted to mess with him a little. Luca crouched in front of him, eyes level, voice calm and steady. You didn't start anything. Marco did, when he touched what he didn't deserve. The possessiveness in his tone sent a shiver through Jax. He thinks he owns me, Jax said quietly. Luca's jaw tightened. Not anymore. He stood and offered his hand. Jax hesitated, then took it. Luca pulled him up easily. Too close, too warm. From this moment on, Luca said, you don't go anywhere alone. A knock echoed through the house. One of Luca's men spoke quietly from the hall. Boss. Valente's car was spotted 2 blocks away. Jax's breath hitched. Luca smiled. Slow, sharp, dangerous. Good, he said. Let him watch. Luca turned to Jax, gaze intense. Today, he murmured, we give him a show. Jax swallowed, fear and adrenaline tangling in his chest. Marco knew where he was. Luca knew Marco knew, and neither man looked like they planned to let him go. Jax froze. A show? You mean like waving at them? No, Luca said, slow and deliberate. He leaned closer, brushing a hand down Jax's arm, making him shiver involuntarily. A more convincing performance. Make them think we're doing the nasty. Jax's eyes widened. Are you insane? He swallowed nervously. I didn't come here to, act like we're that kind of couple in front of anyone, let alone armed mafia goons. Luca smirked. Relax. Pretend. It's theater. You've been acting brave around Marco's men all your life, haven't you? Jax groaned, but felt his heart race. This feels wrong. Exactly, Luca said, dragging Jax toward the window. Now, up close. Pretend you're desperate for me. I'll take care of the rest. Jax's cheeks flamed, but he reluctantly nodded. He wanted revenge, right? If Marco's men thought he was trapped in Luca's bed, sweating over him, maybe Marco would finally lose his cool. From outside, two of Marco's men crouched near the iron fence, binoculars pressed to their eyes. "What the hell is going on?" muttered one. The other adjusted his view. "I think, is that Jax?" His voice faltered. "And Luca. They're moving. Close. Way too close." Inside, Luca whispered into Jax's ear. "Pretend like you can't get enough of me." Jax's face turned crimson. "You realize this is blackmail-level embarrassment if anyone sees this, right?" Luca only smirked. "Exactly. Now, lean into it." Reluctantly, Jax pressed himself against Luca's chest, rolling his eyes dramatically. Luca's hands roamed theatrically across Jax's back, jawline, and shoulders, making it look convincingly intimate without actually doing anything explicit. Outside, Marco's men froze, whispering urgently into their radios. "Boss, I don't know." "There, it looks like they're about to." Before anyone could panic, Luca turned sharply and pulled the curtain over the window with one smooth motion. "There," he said, casually adjusting his shirt. "Safe from prying eyes." Jax blinked, breathless and flushed. "You're insane. Absolutely insane." Luca chuckled, pulling him closer. Marco's men will report back with hearts racing, imaginations worse than reality, revenge served. Jax leaned against him, exhaling. "I feel like a terrible person pretending I'm into this." "You're not terrible," Luca said. "You're smart, and slightly delicious when flustered." Jax groaned. "Did I mention I hate you?" Luca laughed, tugging him closer by the waist. "Not yet, but don't worry, I'll make you say it a few more times." By mid-morning, Marco Valente was pacing his office, fists clenched, his tie half undone, and veins threatening to pop from his forehead. He had received the reports. His men, usually efficient and calm, were practically shaking. What do you mean they were close?" Marco shouted, slamming a hand on the polished mahogany desk. His assistant shrank back, careful to keep a safe distance. "They were touching," one of the men stammered. "It was like what exactly?" Marco's voice pitched higher, nearly breaking. "They were intimate. Very intimate." But then Luca covered the curtain, so we couldn't see the whole thing. Marco's teeth ground together. He could feel heat pooling in his chest. Rage and jealousy tangled in ways that were both infuriating and impossible to control. He grabbed his coat and stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him. "Get eyes on them, all day," he barked. "I want details. Everything." Back at Luca's penthouse, Jax flapped onto the sofa, half laughing, half groaning. "I can't believe I'm doing this," he said, "pretending I'm into it. My pride hurts." Luca didn't answer immediately. He was watching Jax carefully, amusement flickering across his face. "You're a natural," he said finally. "Even flustered, even resisting, it's believable. Marco's men won't know the difference." Jax groaned again. "Natural? I look like a desperate idiot. Why am I doing this again?" Luca leaned closer, voice low and teasing. "Revenge." His fingers brushed Jack's arm lightly. Jax flinched. "You're enjoying this way too much," Jax said, narrowing his eyes. "Maybe," Luca admitted, "but only because you're fun." Jax rolled his eyes, but couldn't hide a tiny blush. "Fun?" "Yes," Luca said, tilting his head. "Fun." It was now nighttime. The house was quiet. No guards nearby, just the low hum of the city outside, and Jax curled up on the couch, pretending to scroll when he was clearly spiraling. "You never told me," Luca said casually, pouring 2 drinks. "How you ended up with Marco?" Jax stiffened. "That wasn't part of the deal." "It is now," Luca replied, handing him a glass. Jax stared into the drink, jaw tight. "I met him when I was broke," he said finally, like deciding between rent and food broke. Luca didn't interrupt. "He paid for my coffee, then my rent, then everything." Jax let out a humorless laugh. At first it felt like rescue. Then it felt like a leash. Luca's expression darkened. "I didn't ask about the business because I didn't want blood on me." He glanced up. "Guess that makes me stupid." Luca's voice was quiet. "No, it makes him a predator." Jax swallowed. "He used to say no one else would put up with me." Luca set his glass down slowly. He was wrong. The way Luca said it, certain, final, made Jack's chest ache. It was the next day, already afternoon, and Marco's men are still there. "Marco's men are still watching," Luca said, "which means we need to look more convincing." What does that mean? Please don't say matching pajamas. Relax, Luca smirked. Just be domestic. They ended up in the kitchen. Jax attempted to cook. Luca watched in silent horror. You're holding the knife like it insulted you, Luca said. It knows what it did, Jax snapped. Luca stepped behind him, guiding his hands properly. Too close. Way too close. Do it like this, he murmured. Jack's brain short-circuited. You're enjoying this. A little, Luca admitted. They cooked, argued, laughed. Jack spilled sauce. Luca wiped it off his cheek with his thumb. Slow, deliberate, unnecessary. Careful, Luca said. Anyone watching might think this is real. Jack's pulse jumped. Isn't that the point? Their eyes met. Something shifted. They ate on the couch, shoulders touching. Luca casually draped an arm behind Jack's. Not quite touching, but close enough to feel. Outside, Marco's men watched a couple laughing, cooking, touching, something Marco had never truly given Jax. And for the first time, pretending didn't feel like pretending at all. Marco Valente smashed his phone against the wall. The images his men sent burned behind his eyes. Jax on Luca's couch, laughing. Jax in Luca's kitchen, smiling like he hadn't smiled in months. Luca's arm around him. Casual, familiar. They're getting too comfortable, Marco snarled. One of his men shifted nervously. Boss, Moretti's security has doubled. We can't get close. Marco's jaw tightened. Then we don't get close. He grabbed his coat. I remind Jax who he belongs to. Within minutes, Jack's phone buzzed nonstop. You think he'll protect you? You were nothing before me. Come home, or I'll make him regret touching you. Jack stared at the screen, hands shaking. Luca saw it instantly. Give it to me, Luca said. Jax hesitated. I can handle it. Luca's voice dropped. I wasn't asking. Jax handed over the phone. Luca read every message. His expression went cold, dangerously calm. He's testing boundaries, Luca said, seeing how far he can push. Jack's voice cracked despite himself. He always does this, when he feels like he's losing. Luca stepped closer. He already lost. That night, Luca insisted Jax sleep in his room. For appearances, Luca said. Of course, Jax replied, trying not to think about the bed, or Luca, or the way Marco's words still echoed in his head. They lay on opposite sides, tension thick. I hate that he still scares me, Jax said quietly. Luca turned, propping himself up on one elbow. Fear doesn't mean weakness. Jax laughed softly. You always sound like you're giving motivational speech. I could be, Luca chuckled. A knock echoed faintly, guards reporting Marco's car circling the block. Luca didn't hesitate. He pulled Jax closer, firm and protective. If they're watching, he murmured, we give them something worth reporting. Jack's breath caught. Luca. Just pretend, Luca said, but his eyes were darker than before. Jax nodded, heart racing. He placed his hand on Luca's chest, just for show. Luca's hand slid to Jack's waist, too natural. Their faces hovered inches apart. This is fake, Jax whispered. Of course, Luca replied. Neither moved away. For a split second, Luca's thumb brushed Jack's jaw, tilting his face up. Jack's lips parted instinctively. The world narrowed. Breath, heat, tension. Then Luca stopped. He pulled back sharply, jaw tight. Enough. Jax blinked, disoriented. We're done pretending for tonight, Luca said, standing up, then quickly walked out the room. Jax sat there, pulse pounding. It was the next day. Jax's phone buzzed again, Marco's name lighting the screen like a threat. Jax tossed the phone onto the couch and dragged his hands through his hair. He won't stop, he muttered. Even when he's not here, he's everywhere. Luca watched him from the doorway, jaw tight. You don't belong to him, he said. Jax laughed shakily. Funny how he doesn't get the memo. Luca crossed the room and stopped too close. Look at me, he said. Jax did. Something cracked. I'm tired, Jax admitted quietly, of being scared, and I'm tired of pretending. Luca exhaled slowly. Then don't pretend. The silence between them felt heavy, charged. Jax stepped forward first, hesitant, reckless, and pressed his forehead to Luca's chest. This is still fake, he whispered, more to himself than to Luca. Luca's hand came up, gripping the back of Jack's neck. Not hard, grounding. Of course it is. Jax tilted his face up. The kiss wasn't planned. It wasn't smooth. It was breath and nerves and relief crashing together. Luca froze for half a second, then kissed him back. Deeper, slower, like he was choosing it. Jax gasped softly, fingers clutching Luca's shirt. "This is just for the act," he murmured. Luca backed him toward the window without realizing it, lips brushing Jack's jaw, his neck. "Then stop reacting like that," Luca replied quietly. Jax couldn't. Outside, Marco's men watched. "Boss," one of them said into his phone, voice tight. "You need to see this." Inside, Luca pressed Jax gently against the glass, forearms bracketing him in. The city lights framed them. Luca's mouth traced slow, deliberate kisses along Jack's throat. Jack's hands slid into Luca's hair, breath hitching. "This isn't fake anymore," Jax whispered. Luca paused. For one terrifying moment, his control wavered. Then he leaned in again, until something clicked. The curtain. Luca turned sharply, yanking it closed in one smooth motion, cutting off the view. He stepped back immediately, chest rising and falling. "Shit," Jax breathed. Outside, Marcos Gaunt swallowed hard. They were kissing. Luca had him pinned. There was a pause. Then Marco's voice came through the phone, low and furious. "Get the car." Inside, Jax pressed a hand to his lips, still shaking. "Did we just—" "Yes," Luca said shortly. Jax looked up at him. "Was that a mistake?" Luca stared at him, eyes dark and unreadable. "I don't make mistakes." Jax's heart skipped. Luca turned away, already reaching for his jacket. "Marco's coming." Jax's stomach dropped. Of course. The alert came before the sound. Luca's phone buzzed once, then twice. He turned toward the security monitors lining the wall. Black SUVs, familiar plates, Marco Valente. Jax felt it before he heard it, the pressure in his chest, the old fear crawling back into his spine. "He's here," Jax whispered. "Yes," Luca said calmly. "Stay upstairs," Luca ordered, shrugging into his jacket. His voice was calm, but his eyes were lethal. "I'm not a child," Jax snapped, fear sharpening his tone. Luca stopped in front of him. "No, you're not. But I'm not letting him have you back." The words hit harder than the threats ever had. Before Jax could respond, voices echoed below. Marco's voice cut through the house like a blade. Furious, possessive, familiar in the worst way. "Luca," Marco called. "Send him out. This doesn't concern you." The guards' voices crackled through the intercom. "Boss, Valente's requesting entry. Orders." Luca didn't look at Jax when he answered. "Stand down." Jax's head snapped up. "What?" "Let him in," Luca repeated. "But no weapons past the gate." "Luca." Jax stepped forward, panic flaring. I said I'd protect you," Luca interrupted, finally turning to him. His gaze was steady, grounding. "And I will, so stay here." He walked downstairs. Downstairs, the doors opened. Marco Valente walked in like he owned the place. Tailored suit, controlled rage, eyes locked on Luca. His men stayed back, tense but obedient. Marco's gaze flicked past Luca, searching. "Where is he?" Marco demanded. Luca didn't move aside. "You don't get to demand anything here." Marco laughed, sharp and ugly. "You think standing between us makes you powerful?" Jax listened from the top of the stairs, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Every instinct screamed at him to hide, to stay quiet, to let Luca handle it. But he couldn't stop. Marco's voice softened, dangerously. "You let him come here," Marco said. "You know he is mine." "Was," Luca corrected, "and it was his choice." Silence stretched. Marco's jaw tightened. "Bring him out." "No." Marco's eyes flashed. "You're protecting him like he means something." Luca didn't answer immediately. Jax held his breath. "I tried," Luca said at last, voice low, controlled, "to keep this transactional." Jax's chest tightened. Marco smiled, slow and cruel. "Tried?" "Yes. He was leverage, a way to destabilize you." Luca's gaze hardened. "But then I realized that men like you confuse ownership with affection." Marco scoffed. "You think you're better?" "I know I am," Luca said, "because I don't cage what I want." Marco stepped forward. "Then you want him." A pause. Jax's heart stopped. "I don't fall in love," Luca said quietly, "but I protect what's mine." Something in Marco's expression cracked. Not fear, jealousy. "Funny," Marco said. "That's exactly what I told him." Jax's hands curled into fists. "That's not true." Both men froze. Jax stepped into the light at the top of the stairs, shaking with rage and adrenaline. "You didn't protect me," he said, voice sharp. "You trapped me." Marco's eyes widened. "Jax." "Don't," Jax snapped, descending the stairs. "Don't say my name." Luca turned. "I told you to stay. I'm done staying quiet, Jax said, not looking at him. He stopped in front of Marco, heart racing, fear clawing, but something stronger burned through it now. Anger. You cheated on me, Jax said, then you threatened me for leaving. Marco stepped closer, instinctively. Luca moved immediately, placing himself half a step in front of Jax without touching him. Marco laughed bitterly. You ran to him. Yes, Jax said, because I knew it would hurt you. The admission landed hard. I didn't plan to fall into his world, Jax continued, but I did plan to stop letting you make me feel small. Marco's voice dropped. You think this is real? He's using you. Jax smiled, sharp and trembling. But he never told me I was lucky to be tolerated. Luca's jaw tightened. Marco's gaze flicked between them. You belong to me. Jax laughed, loud, broken. I belong to no one. Marco stepped back, eyes dark. This isn't over. Finally, Marco adjusted his cufflinks. You made your choice, he said to Jax. Now live with it. He turned toward the door, but paused. This house won't protect you forever. Peace came quietly, too quietly. For days after Marco's visit, nothing happened. No threats, no surprise attacks, no tension-filled confrontations in the halls. Luca's house returned to its usual rhythm. And Luca himself? He acted like the kiss had never happened. That was the worst part. He didn't tease Jax about it, didn't acknowledge it, didn't look at him differently. If anything, he looked farther away, controlled, almost distant. Every time Jax tried to bring it up, Luca disappeared. Luca, about that night. I have a meeting. Can we talk for a second? I need to deal with something. Stay inside. Once, Jax caught his wrist gently. Did it mean anything to you? Luca didn't pull away, but he didn't answer either. I'll be back later, he said, already turning away. Later never came. At first, Jax told himself Luca was busy, but as the days passed, something ugly started creeping into his chest. Doubt. He noticed the way Luca kept conversations short now. The way guards seemed more attentive to Jax than Luca was. The way Luca never stayed in the same room too long. It began to feel like Jax was an obligation, a responsibility, a problem. He stopped asking questions, stopped hovering, stopped waiting up at night. One afternoon, Jax stood alone in the bedroom that had slowly started to feel like a cage instead of a sanctuary. His bag sat open on the bed. He hadn't planned it, not consciously, but his hands moved anyway. Clothes, phone charger, wallet. That was it. He didn't leave a note. He found Luca downstairs, reviewing something on a tablet. Guards lingered nearby, alert but relaxed. I'm leaving, Jax said quietly. Luca looked up. For a split second, just one, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even fear. Then it vanished. If that's what you want, Luca said. No argument, no protest. Jax nodded slowly, throat tight. I just don't want to be in the way. You never were, Luca replied. But he didn't reach for him, didn't stop him, didn't follow. Jax waited. 1 heartbeat, 2, 3, nothing. So he turned and walked out. The gate opened smoothly, too smoothly. The guards didn't question him. They'd been ordered not to. Luca had made sure of that long ago. The city air felt different after days inside the compound. Louder, sharper, real. Jax took a breath. Maybe this is better, he told himself. Maybe I imagined the connection. He made it half a block. That was all. The van pulled up beside him without warning. The door slid open. Hands grabbed him. Hard, efficient, practiced. Jax barely had time to gasp before a cloth was pressed over his mouth. The smell hit him instantly. Chemical. Bitter. No, he tried to shout, but the world tilted. The last thing he saw was the street blurring as the door slammed shut. Then darkness. Back at the house, Luca stood where Jax had left him, tablet forgotten in his hand. A guard approached carefully. Boss, Valente's network just went quiet in the east sector. Luca's jaw tightened. Another guard's phone rang. His expression drained of color. Boss, he said, we just lost Jax's signal. The tablet slipped from Luca's hand and shattered on the floor. Get the car, Luca said, voice deadly calm. Lock down the city. His eyes darkened with something raw and furious, because only one person would dare touch Jax, and Luca had just let him walk away. Luca didn't shout. That terrified everyone, more than when he did. Luca was already moving, jacket on, gun holstered, orders spilling from his mouth with lethal precision. Close the ports, block Valente routes, Drag every informant out of whatever hole they're hiding in. This is on me, Luca said to no one in particular. He replayed the moment over and over. If that's what you want. He should have stopped him. He should have said something, anything. Now Marco would pay for that mistake. Warehouses linked to Marco went up in flames within the hour. Safe houses were raided. Money pipelines froze. A Valente lieutenant was dragged bleeding into Luca's presence, shaking. "Where?" Luca said calmly. "Is Jax?" The man sobbed. I don't know. Marco didn't tell us. He said it was personal." Luca leaned in, eyes empty. "Then you're useless." A gunshot echoed. Luca slid into his car. His knuckles were white. His jaw was clenched so hard it ached. By the second hour, Marco knew Luca was coming, and Luca didn't care if it started a war. He welcomed it. Jax woke up chained to a chair. His head throbbed. His mouth tasted like chemicals. The room was dim, concrete walls closing in, a single light hanging overhead. And Marco sat across from him, perfectly relaxed. "Morning," Marco said lightly. "You always did sleep too deeply." Jack's stomach dropped. "You," his voice cracked. "You kidnapped me." Marco raised an eyebrow. "Kidnapped is such an ugly word. I retrieved what was stolen." Jax laughed shakily. "You cheated on me." Marco shrugged. "And?" The word hit harder than a slap. "And you ran," Marco continued, "straight into Luca Moretti's arms. That was insulting." Jack's hands curled into fists. "You don't get to talk about insults." Marco tilted his head. "You think this was about love?" Silence stretched. "I never cared," Marco said plainly. "You were convenient, soft, pretty, something to come home to when blood was on my hands." Jack's vision blurred. "You chose Luca," Marco went on, voice sharp now, "so I wanted you to know what that choice costs." Jax lifted his head slowly, rage burning through the pain. "You're pathetic." Marco chuckled. "You're so cute." Just then, the door slammed open. Gunfire erupted. Marco swore. Smoke filled the room. Screams echoed. And through the chaos, Luca's voice tore through everything. Jack's heart slammed against his ribs. The door exploded inward. Luca stood there, feral, blood on his knuckles, eyes wild and locked on Jax like the world had narrowed to a single point. For the first time since he'd left, Jax felt chosen, and Marco Valente realized he'd made a fatal mistake. The warehouse was chaos. Gunfire echoed, metal rang, bodies hit the floor. Luca moved like a storm given shape, precise, ruthless, unstoppable. His men secured the perimeter within seconds, but Luca didn't slow. He went straight to Jax. Jax was shaking, not from fear anymore, but from adrenaline, anger, relief, everything crashing at once. Luca crossed the room in 3 strides and cupped Jack's face with both hands, rough, grounding. "Are you hurt?" Jack swallowed. No, he didn't touch me." Luca exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. His forehead pressed briefly to Jack's. "I should have stopped you from leaving." "Yes," Jack snapped, voice breaking. "You should have." Before Luca could answer, Marco laughed, slow, mocking. They both turned. Marco was restrained now. Blood running from a cut on his brow, suit ruined, smile still intact. "Touching," he said. "Really, you burned half the city for him." Luca stood, placing himself fully in front of Jax. "You don't get to look at him." Marco's gaze flicked to Jax anyway. Marco scoffed. "You chose wrong, Luca. He'll leave you too." Luca didn't even look at him when he spoke. "Kill him," he said calmly. Marco's eyes widened. "Wait, a single gunshot." Marco Valente fell silent forever. Jax flinched, but didn't look away. Something inside him settled. I guess he finally was involving himself in the Mafia business. It was quiet afterward. Too quiet for a place that had just ended a war. They sat in the back of the car as it drove away from the warehouse, city lights bleeding past the windows. Jax stared at his hands. They were still shaking. "I didn't stop you because I didn't care," Luca said finally. Jax laughed bitterly. "That's not how it felt." "I know," Luca said, "and that's on me." He turned fully toward Jax. No guards, just a man who had almost lost something he didn't know how to name. "I was afraid," Luca admitted quietly, "that if I asked you to stay, you'd realize how much power you had over me." Jax's breath hitched. "You ignored me." "I tried to protect you by distancing myself," Luca said. "Instead, I hurt you." "Then why didn't you say anything?" Jax demanded, tears finally spilling. "Why did you let me feel disposable?" Luca reached out, hesitated, then took Jax's hands firmly. Because if you mattered, and you do, then losing you would ruin me. Jax laughed through tears. Congratulations, it almost did. They stared at each other raw and unguarded. I don't know how to love softly, Luca said, but I know how to choose, and I choose you, even if you walk away tomorrow. Jax leaned in, forehead resting against Luca's. I don't want to walk away. Luca's breath shuddered. The kiss this time wasn't desperate or performative or strategic. It was slow, real. When they pulled apart, Jax whispered, So what happens now? Luca smiled faintly. Now we rebuild, slowly, honestly. And the city? Jax teased weakly. Luca smirked. The city already knows not to touch what's mine. Jax raised an eyebrow. I thought you didn't own people. I don't, Luca said, pressing a kiss to his temple. But you own me.